All right, welcome back, everyone. We are on the week 3 boot camp. And today we're going to be going over day 1. Definitely take your time with this one. This is going to be a lot of work. But I mean, if you think about it, when you get done with scheduling a patient, getting through a day 1/day 2 financials, I mean, this is the most active speaking you'll be doing. Other than that, it's pretty much very passive, very much just listening to people and comprehending and doing a lot of active listening and minor explanations for their questions. And that's pretty much it. So once you get past the day 1, day 2, from a speaking standpoint, it's very straightforward. So day 1 speaking. Then next week, we're going to do comprehension. So this is all active speaking. This is really important because these are the phrases, phrasing, scripts that you'll need to know so that you know how to stay in control of the conversation, controlling the frame. You're the one asking the questions. They're the ones that are giving the answers. And that's it. So we'll get straight into it. So day 1, basically think about it from essentially from when the patient walks in to on their first day to then scheduling for the review of findings. So pretty much everything on day 1. This is excluding review of findings, review of x-rays, finances stuff. Basically, it's exemplifying a 2-day process. But if you have a 1-day process, you'll just use week 3 and week 4, right? This is week 3 and then week 4. So that would be day 1. And then you'll just combine it with the next week, which would be day 2. So, or a review of findings day. So when the patient walks in, let's say patient walks in and maybe you're at the front desk, maybe you're not, but either way, someone has to say, hola, buenas tardes, or buenos dias. That's it. Tardes or dias, which means hello, good afternoon, or morning. All right, pretty easy stuff. And then when they walk in, you're going to say, ¿Cómo te llamas? Right, which is, what is your name? Right, let's say you have multiple Spanish speakers coming in that day. You're going to want to know what their name is. So that is how you say what their name is. So, ¿Cómo te llamas? And then they're going to say, probably, me llamo Juan, we'll say. And then they'll say, like, tengo una quiropráctica hoy, or tiene una cita, tengo una cita hoy. And then you can say, mi nombre es, or you can also say, me llamo, and then I'll just say mine. So, Doctor Castillo, mucho gusto. Okay, which means my name is Dr. Castillo. Good to meet you, right? Because then we've never met them before. So this is a standard introduction. Basically, then you'll say, hey, siéntate, por favor. Siéntate, por favor. Y voy a tener papeles para llenar. Basically, sit down, please. Because it's a command. Siéntate is the command. So anytime you're commanding someone to do something, you want to make it a little bit lighter and say por favor afterwards. So sit down, please. And I will have some papers for you to fill out. And then after that, you can ask them like, si tienes preguntas, me avisas, okay? Si tienes preguntas, me avisas, okay? Which means, hey, if you have any questions, just let me know, okay? And we'll kind of go into, I hate to do basic vocab stuff, but so avisar means like to let somebody know. That's like the root verb. And you would spell it like this. All right. Means to kind of like warn, but people like actually use it in a sense of like to let me know, to like inform or notify, you could say. So We know that avisar is an AR verb. So aviso means I notify. Avisas means you notify. Okay. Avisa means he or she notifies. Avisamos means we notify. And then avisan means they notify. Pretty much anytime I do a verb conjugation, I'm going to position the verbs just like this. Aviso, avisas, avisa. Basically the yo version, the to version, the else less ella, which is like he or she. And then avisamos means we. And then avisan means they, right? They warn, notify. So notice when I said up here, si tienes preguntas, me avisas, okay? Avisas means you warn, but notice I put the me in front of it. The me refers to me. So like, let's say we're to go me avisas, which means, and it's actually kind of in reverse. So it means you let me know, or you notify me. We'll just say you will be more clear. That's more formal. So you notify me. Let's say you wanted to say notify her or him. You would do where are we at? There we go. You would do le avisas. I'm still using avisas, which means like you warn, but because in the front of that it's a le, that's he or she. Notify her, him or her. Okay. And then let's say, oh, I'm not going to go any other conjugations, but basically when you see a may, it records it, excuse me. It's going towards you, or I should say me. May is me. That's just for learning purposes. Te would be you, lay, he or she. I'll do one more. Nos. We. So anytime you see these, I mean, there's a fancy word for these, but these are words that you put in before a conjugated verb, avisas, in order to construct a sentence. So if you want to say me avisas, you'd be saying notify you notify me. It's in reverse. If you want to say, just be weird, but you notify you would say te avisas. You'd never say that. I mean, it's super awkward. And then if you want it, like, let's say, excuse me, let's say notify him or her at the front desk, le avisas, which means notify her. Or you can say nos avisas. But to be honest, I don't say all these. I just want you to know that if you hear one of these before the verb, know that it's a backwards phrase and to interpret like that. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions on that, let me know. And we'll continue. So if you haven't already, just be sure to follow along because I've already actually put out a review. It's a week 3 boot camp review and it's in paper form. So I'm essentially reading off this form, but I'm filling it in with things that I think that you will need to know. So I'm not going to go into the forms section. Forms need to be in Spanish. We all know that. Excuse me. One second here. So essentially, oh, one second here. We're unmuted. Essentially, when you have a patient walk in, make sure the forms are in Spanish. I can't tell you how many times I've even had to help them sign the forms and because they don't know how to write. They know how to speak, but sometimes they don't know how to write. So be sure to be open or be ready to help them fill out a form because that will happen. So make sure everything's just clear, like nombre, dirección, which is address, contacto de emergencia. If you need any free forms, I'll just give you mine. Just send it to you to your inbox and you can use mine and then put your clinic name where I would put mine. And I've designed the form so that you can just basically copy paste and then fill in your own clinic information. So I don't think it needs to be that hard. If you are in front of the patients and you're just telling them like, hey, you got to sign here or date here, these are commands. So firma aquí means sign here. And then fecha aquí, for example, would be date here. Oh, that doesn't. There we go. So firma aquí, sign here, and then fecha aquí, date here. If you want to say like lleno aquí or llena, that's a command. Fill here, right? You can typically I'll use highlighters, so I'll highlight in yellow the place to put the signature and the dates, and then I'll highlight any areas that need to be filled out, like absolutely necessary. Sometimes, like if it's not a work accident, I won't have them fill out work information because I'm like, I really don't need to know. But for the essentials, I like to highlight. So let's say they have filled out the paperwork. You've said, hey, if there's any coffee or water in front for you to have, feel free to take it. You can say, you can just like point. I usually use my hands a lot when I'm talking. So I'll say, hay café, because we do have this. Y agua enfrente, si quieres. There is coffee and water in front if you want. So notice in that sentence, you see the word si. Now, if somebody were to walk up to you and say si, that means yes. But if you have si quieres, because it's in front of a conjugated verb, it's actually translated as if. So it means there is coffee and water in front if you want, right? Quieres, si quieres. And I let them fill out their stuff, blah, 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 blah. Just going down the sheets. Let's say they fill out everything. You just say, oh, okay, gracias, gracias. Entonces vas a esperar unos 5 minutos hasta yo tengo toda información en el sistema. Después vamos a comenzar el proceso con tu cita hoy. Very straightforward. This would be for front desk, I would say. This isn't something that you need to know, but this would be for front desk. And then common questions they might have is, ¿Dónde está el baño? You can understand that. Other questions might be like, oh, ¿aceptas aseguranza? Which means, do you accept insurance? And then you can say, sí, tienes la tarjeta. We'll do this one right now. Si tienes aseguranza médica, puedo copiar tu tarjeta. If you have medical insurance, I can copy your card. All right, pretty straightforward there. Nice. All right. And then once all that stuff is good, I mean, they're going to ask other questions too. They might ask for like, hey, what's the price going to be? What am I going to receive? And really have all that ready. I did a basic, like a generic phrasing that I use, and then I put a couple other things that some of you use as well. So for example, if they ask like, ¿cuál es el costo de la cita? You can say, oh, la cita es solamente, which means the appointment is only, and then blank. So make sure you have that pricing ready. You have to know your numbers. And if you ever have questions, I can't tell you how many years I've used Google Translate, and I just put what I want in English, and then it translates to Spanish. I use that for only specific, like very short phrases. Google Translate is perfect for that. But if you were to just like copy pasta your entire script for day one, it would come out completely messed up. And so I guess once Google Translate figures their ish out with that, like I'll be obsolete. But until then, I mean, even from a teaching standpoint, it's nice to have somebody to kind of talk you through why things are the way they are. But until then, you will need a coach or somebody that is bilingual in your clinic so that they can confirm that everything's correct. So make sure you're able to say all those things on the paper. It says, la cita solamente will say $100 or 100. Y vas a recibir examen, consulta, radiografías y terapia, for example. If you do the adjustment too, you'd say y ajuste. which means and adjustment. Da, 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 da. And then down below, I kind of go into like, hey, soy doctor Castillo, ¿cómo te llamas? Mucho gusto, ven conmigo, por favor. All right, ven conmigo, por favor, which means come with me, please. And you're going to sound like a broken record. You literally will sound like a broken record every single time you go through it. Front desk will be probably sick of it, but I mean, they know what you're doing. I mean, you're sticking within your zone of Spanish that you know, and it's like a groove that you just keep on. I mean, this is how we learn. Our brains are neuroplastic, so like as you continue to learn something, it just creates more of a deeper and deeper groove in the brain, figuratively speaking, right? And those neurons will just connect faster and faster and faster as you continue speaking. So one of the benefits of not straying far from the beaten path is that the more times you do this and the more times you practice this, the easier it becomes. And then it'll become like you're not even thinking, like you just see the piece of paper and then you look at the patient, you say, ven conmigo, and then you actually beckon them with your hand so they know what you're saying and they'll just follow you, right? So just stay within your lane when it comes to this stuff and you'll do just fine. So let's say, oh yeah, so as you're going back into the room, a lot of times I'll ask, ¿cómo encontraste? Encontraste la clínica, which means how did you find the clinic? And they'll either say like, oh, busque por Google, right? You'll hear the main terms in English, or busque por Facebook, or sometimes they don't even say Facebook, they say face. So yo encontré por face. I actually have that written down there. Yeah, that's awesome. Common responses are un paciente, which means a patient, un amigo, el Google, por internet, which means through the internet. Alguien en la tienda, which means like somebody in the store. I mean, you'd be surprised how people find your clinic, especially with the Spanish speaker. So usually I respond with, oh, okay, bueno. And that's it. Continuing on. Oh, this is a really good one. This is more of an advanced phrase. So if somebody says like, oh, mi primo, or un paciente, right? I won't ask who the patient is, but I'll say, gracias, which means thanks, a la confianza de tu or de paciente, right? Or if it's brother, de tu hermano. There we go. Which means thanks for the trust of the patient or your brother or whoever it is. Because it's a great filler phrase and it just kind of gets the conversation going, and it's a very I probably say it every single time. And like I said, like I'm kind of a boring robot when I do my Spanish script, but everything is calculated. There are no surprises, unless, of course, I mean, I'll just be straight with you. If it's somebody that is super chatty Cathy and they're just going crazy, like, oh, blah, 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 and they just start talking and talking, then it's kind of like, whoa. And then I'll just start kind of nodding my head like, okay, okay. And then I'll just kind of like interrupt, kind of. There are good interrupting phrases that I'll do because I don't feel bad. They're here to see me. I don't want them to waste my time. So I might go, entonces, ¿cómo puedo ayudarte? Right? Which means now moving on, essentially. How can I help you? Right? Another one I like to use is if I don't understand them. Gracias por compartiendo. ¿Cómo puedo ayudarte? Which means thanks for sharing. How can I help you? This is great for if they just start rambling. But honestly, if there's a specific question that they're asking, you have to answer it. But if they're just rambling, you can just say, oh yeah, thanks for sharing. Entonces, ¿cómo puedo ayudarte? Like, how can I help you? And be excited to help them. And then they'll just start talking. So then you can get into your script. You can start asking things like, ¿a dónde te duele? Describe el dolor, and they'll just point to it. I mean, a lot of times it's not like they're going to sit there with their arms crossed and go, me duele en mi rodilla, right? It's like they want to make sure that they're going to know that you're not a native Spanish speaker, number one. But number two, they're going to want to know that you can understand where their pain is. And then once you start asking a couple of clarifying phrases like describe el dolor, like describe the pain, they'll start saying things like dolor con piquetes, dolor en general, which means like sharp or dull pain. We'll go over that stuff in another module. You'll start asking things like ¿cuál es el nivel del dolor normalmente? And then you can say es poquito, medio, or mucho a veces, which means like, hey, is it like a little bit, medium, or a lot at times? And really, the reason why we're doing this, guys, is so that you can hear the words that you're going to be saying through me. So you can look at this recording over and over again just for pronunciation, because as long as you can say the words más o menos, like more or less, you'll be just fine. So we'll start at the beginning. ¿Cómo puedo ayudarte? ¿A dónde te duele? Describe el dolor, por favor. ¿Cuál es el nivel del dolor normalmente? Right? And you can have, guys, you can have this on your screen in front of you, and you can just put it in Spanish, and then right underneath you can create a couple spaces so that you can look like you're working on your computer. This is not, they're not going to be like looking at your computer. They're going to be across the room from you, or across the desk from you. So you can have this available in front of you if you really wanted to, and then just type, right? ¿Cuál es el nivel de dolor? What's the level of pain? ¿Has tuvido accidentes en el pasado? Have you had accidents in the past? Cirugías, sometimes they'll say operaciones, which means like surgeries, operations. Do you have any conditions that I need to know? Condiciones, necesito saber, right? And then they'll tell you, I have a knee surgery or whatever. Knee surgeries are pretty common. And that would be cirugía. Also, guys, like if you have any questions on pronunciation, you can literally copy pasta my phrases into the Google Translate, and there's a function that not only translate it, but you can click the little voice icon, and it'll actually, granted, it's a very thick, authentic accent, but it'll give you the pronunciation of the phrase that I'm giving to you now. So any sort of phrase, you can just copy pasta on that if you ever want to look up how it sounds, the pronunciation, and do it yourself. So, or you can just listen to this. So either way works. You can do next. This is the most important question. ¿Cuál es la razón que te gustaría arreglar la causa del problema que tienes? Right, so we'll type that one out. Hold on one second. There we go. What is the reason you would like to fix the cause of the problem that you have? Doing a backwards translation. ¿Cuál es la razón que te gustaría arreglar? There we go. La causa del problema que tienes. Which means that, what is the reason you like to fix the cause of the problem? And a lot of times they'll actually give it to you right away. I do a lot of comprehension with docs, and well, you guys, I should say. And what some of the things that I've found through doing tons and tons of histories is they're going to tell you right away what's bothering them, and you might not even have to ask that question. But if they're not really giving you any insight on like why it's a problem for them, this is why we ask this question. So I would not forget this ever. And then another optional question you can ask, like, hey, if I can fix the cause of your problem without medications or pills, is it something that you want to do? Essentially finding a way to get a yes statement from the patient. Si yo puedo arreglar tu problema sin medicamentos or pastillas, eso es algo que quieres hacer, right? And then they'll say yes or no. Most likely they'll say yes though. So hopefully you've gotten all the information that you need by now. And now we're going to go into what you're going to do for today. Now, for me, I do a 2-day process. I do an exam. I do x-rays if needed. I do x-ray a lot of people. A lot of times they're like demanding x-rays from me a lot of the times. And we have an x-ray machine, so I can use that option. And it's a great visual to really point out stuff. And you'd be surprised what you find. Like some of these people have never been x-rayed before, so you find a lot of interesting stuff. And you can just explain the plan today, or the plan that you're going to do for their day one. So I'll give you an example of what I say. I say, vamos a hacer un examen y radiografías hoy para determinar si hay algo puedo hacer para ayudarte. Right? I'm going to be doing an exam, x-rays to determine if there's something that I can help you with. Necesito tiempo para repasar toda la información. I'm going to need time to review all the information. Después, hoy vas a regresar a la clínica mañana o lo más pronto posible y voy a saber qué puedo hacer para ayudarte. All right, so after today, you're gonna come back to the clinic tomorrow or as soon as humanly possible, and I'm gonna know whether or not I can help you. If I can help, right? Si yo puedo ayudar, voy a repasar mi recomendación profesional, frecuencia de tratamientos y el costo del plan, right? For cash plan, essentially. So if I can help you, I'm gonna review my recommendation professionally, my treatment frequency, and the cost of the plan. Do you understand me? Me entiendes? And then hopefully they understand you, because this is a script. So if you say all the words correct, they will understand you. And then you can say like, hey, hay preguntas para mí en este momento. Common ones I might get are, hey, is my insurance going to cover this? And let's say you do have a heavy insurance clinic that covers a lot of care. You could say posiblemente. Say, I know this is a comprehension, but mi aseguranza cubre. Or I could say like, las radiografías son incluidas, right? They might say that too as well. Are the x-rays are included? Is my insurance going to cover it? You know, all that stuff. And let's say it's an insurance question. You could say, necesitamos verificar los beneficios que tienes. Si ellos cubren, if the insurance covers, I didn't even put a dash there. Vas a recibir un refund. Okay. All right. That'll make sense for most people. If they don't understand refund, you can just say, vas a recibir tu dinero. I'll put that. All right. But most oftentimes they're not going to ask that stuff. They're going to be asking that stuff in front. So then after that, you basically will do the exam and x-rays. So like I said before, if you want somebody to come with you, you just say, hey, ven conmigo. And then they'll come with you. In the review, you'll also see a day one process. If it is a day one process, you'll just change your lingo a little bit, meaning you're gonna basically do the exam and then right on the spot explain your recommendation and what they need to fix the cause of their problem. In the scripting that I used for the second one, where it says day one close, day one process, I use arreglar tus molestias, which means like fixing the things that are bothering you. Or you could actually put what condition they're suffering from. So I'll give an example. So, también voy a explicar mi recomendación profesional que necesitas para arreglar tu dolor de la espalda or dolor del cuello. ¿Me entiendes? Right? And use their condition in your phrasing to connect with them even more. So it's not just like you're a robot. Even though, like, yeah, this stuff is robotic, if you include their specific condition, they're going to feel like you're listening to them even more. So let's go to the exam portion. So at the end of the day, you can always just use a repite por favor. Right, repite por favor. I'm going to start over here. I'm just going to start doing this. You can always go back and see this stuff. So repite por favor, which means repeat, please. Can't spell. There we go. This is going to be really important because if you don't understand how to say something to someone, you can just always ask them, repeat this, please. Repeat, please. And then do the action that you want them to do. I kid you not. There have been some people that from different countries other than Mexico that when I tell them to go back, they misinterpret me. So if I go like un poquito más atrás, which means a little bit more back, sometimes they'll move like to their left, you know, if I'm on their right side, because they think like, oh, I need to move away from him. It's like, no. According to your position, you need to move back. And so I'll actually sit next to them and then demonstrate what they need to do. Let's say I want them to move back to check reflexes for their knees. I'll actually sit right next to them and then scoot back and say repite por favor, and then they'll be like, oh, eso, like atrás, and then they'll do it. So it's a really great phrase to use. It solves a lot of problems, to be honest. So common things I'll use, these are the most common. I actually have a sheet in each treatment room for doctors if they are new. I'm actually going to start taking on interns soon, but like, let's say I have a doc that doesn't speak Spanish, which I have before. I have a sheet that says boca abajo, face down. It actually has this like a person that's face down. So I have little sheets that I use for people so that they can get through like exams. Like if I need my other doc to do an exam on a patient, all the commands are there so they don't forget them. So we'll just start again. Boca abajo is face down. Boca arriba is face up. Voy a tocar aquí. This is a really important one. I'll tell you why. Voy a tocar aquí. I am going to touch here. All right. The reason that's important, especially for ladies, is you're gonna want to just explain to them what you're doing, and to make it less weird. Let's say you were, I don't know. Let's say you legit want to figure out if they have sciatica or not. You're going to have to look around in the piriformis. And then, so you tell them like, hey, I'm going to touch here and then touch there, but don't be weird about it. You know, like actually touch there. Or sometimes I'll put a fist down and then I'll put it against, you know, my own, I'll put it against my own leg. So it's not like super weird. And yeah, then that will work out. So next I'll say sentado, por favor, which means seated. Parada, por favor, which means standing, please. Voy a poner presión aquí. I will put pressure here. It's another good one. If you're going to do muscle testing, this is the tougher one because they don't know what muscle testing is. And if you say like, hey, we're going to do a muscle test, they're going to be like, what? I'll tell them like to resist. And so typically what I'll do is, let's say they're seated and you say like, hey, repite por favor, and then you lift your arm up, kind of like you're doing, you're checking for the deltoid strength. I would just put a little pressure down initially, and then I'll say, da me fuerza, which means give me strength. And I'll say it, like I'll say it like that, like dame fuerza, fuerza, like force, give me strength. And they'll feel my pressure and they're like, oh, okay, I gotta resist this. I gotta resist this. And then once they understand that first time, it's way easier. But it's just getting past that first hurdle, like, wow, this is a different test. I'm pretty sure they've never been to somebody who's done a muscle test, and I will test their muscles. So another one that I'll use, vas a resistir cuando pongo presión. You are going to resist when I put pressure, right? Another one that you can use for muscle testing. It's a little bit more in depth, a little bit more advanced of a command. And then as I'm doing like neck range of motion or low back, you can ask them like, hey, te duele? Does that hurt you? Or tienes dolor? Do you have pain? You could be very informal, and just say dolor, pain. That might be tough. For some reason, I don't know. I've tried dolor, but it just sometimes it doesn't make sense for some reason. I mean, they'll understand you at the end of the day, but I think it's probably better to do what I do, and I do te duele, which means do you hurt? And directions, of course, a la izquierda, a la derecha. If I want them to look in front or straight, enfrente, in front. I'll ask them if they have sensation. Tienes sensación aquí? Right, great for if they have like numbness tingling down the leg, checking to see if there's any differences in sensation. And essentially that should be pretty straightforward. You should be able to get through all orthopedic tests because all you're doing is just doing them. You don't have to tell them every single thing like, I'm going to lift your leg 80 degrees now. You just lift the leg, or you could just say, voy a chequear tu pierna. You can use this for virtually everything. Voy a chequear. This is totally Spanglish. Chequear. There we go. Two means I'm going to check your. You could use that pretty much every single time if you wanted to. I don't mind using the same command every single time just because I want to make sure that they understand me, and trust me, they're super thankful. They like, I can't tell you how many times people say like, I can't believe I found a Spanish speaking chiropractor because I think in my area, there are probably about 5 or 6 good ones. So yeah, use the same things over and over again because they work. Oh, this is great. Next stuff. I wrote all this stuff a long time ago, so now we're just kind of regurgitating it. So I think what would really separate you as a Spanish-speaking chiropractor from an English-speaking chiropractor even with a translator in the room is if you're able to tell them what you feel as you're doing the exam. This really kind of solidifies you're the doc. I mean, you're in charge, you know your stuff. And it's really cool for a patient to feel like, wow, this doc is not only feeling my body and doing the exam, but he or she can also feel what might be going on with my hip or my low back. And let's say a hip just isn't moving properly. You're just pushing. One of them's bouncy. The other one is really stuck. You could say, siento, which means I feel, un problema con esta cadera. All right. The reason that it's esta cadera is because cadera is a feminine. Feminine nouns like cadera means hip, cadera. So you'd use esta. If it was a masculine, let's say, for example, like just for 1 second, let's say cadera, like hip, actually the hip means cadero, or yeah, we'll say cadero, which is an O, it's not an A. So anything other than an A is most likely going to be a masculine verb or a masculine noun. Instead, you would say con este, which means say fake phrase here. I'm just being weird. This is totally incorrect. Don't repeat this, but just for example purposes, estocadero, this hip. See how you don't have to match the O's. I'm sorry. Typo. I hope I'm not confusing them. It's either este or esta. It's the emphasis. So it's either este, which is masculine, or esta, which is feminine. So cadera is feminine. So you'd use esta. Let's say you wanted to say this pen, bolígrafo. Bolígrafo means pen. It's a noun. You wouldn't say esta bolígrafo because bolígrafo doesn't end in an A. You would actually say este bolígrafo. We'll write that down. Side topic. This is what they would teach you in like 9th grade. So este bolígrafo. There we go. So make sure to get those right. They're not going to like burn you at the stake if you mess that up. But it is good to know the basics. So este and esta basically means this and then the thing that you're talking about. It's usually a noun. Continuing on. Demonstrating that you know what's going on. Siento mucho. I like to exaggerate. Siento mucha tensión en esta área. I feel a lot of tension in this area. And they'll be impressed. They'll be like, yeah, that's actually the area that's really bothering me. Right? It's like we've been doing this for a while. Hopefully, you know, if you're a student listening to this or like first or second year in practice, like it might still be hard for you to do that. But if you have a lot of years into practice and you know your stuff, like you know when there's something going on. So tell them. Let's see. Oh, mobilidad is the next one. Let's cancel some of this stuff out. The reason I'm doing this is because I did this another time, and for some reason, I started going off into Neverland, and you guys couldn't see what I was putting out, so I'm just going to stick in this area. Hay menos movilidad en este área. That's a tricky one. Notice área ends in A, but I'm using este. That's a reversal one. Área is technically masculine. Don't ask me why. There are certain nouns that are confusing, meaning they'll have an A at the end, but you still address it as a masculine noun. So that's just one of them. Área. Another one is problema. El problema. Este problema. El problema means the problem. But if I were to say this problem, it would be este problema. Hay menos movilidad en este área. There is less mobility in this area. This is why it's good to listen to this stuff when I'm talking. I mean, if you look at the review, you'll know some stuff, but if you're not listening to it, it's not going to sink in. So that's why we're doing this. Let's say we start talking about x-rays. Let's say at the end of the exam, we're like, hey, a causa de tu condición, this will be a script, okay? A causa de tu condición, me gustaría tomar radiografías para evaluar la condición de tus huesos, right? I want to take some radiographs, I want to take some x-rays to evaluate the condition of your bones. I say that all the time. Estas, right? These radiographs, estas radiografías, notice the S on the end of estas because it's a plural. If it was just one radiograph, I would say esta radiografía, but we're talking about multiple radiographs in this or multiple x-rays. Estas radiografías va a ayudar con encontrando la causa del problema también. Ven conmigo, right? It's gonna help find the cause of the problem as well. So then we'll take x-rays. X-rays are pretty straightforward. You can always do like repite por favor, ven para acá, which means come over here. And to be honest, like I've I've even had some people not be able to understand me, and I've just said like sometimes I'll do it in English too, like, hey, can you turn this way? And I'll actually use my hands, like, and I'll turn how they want. I'll actually put my hands like, yeah, voy a tocar aquí, vas a tronar a la derecha, or vas a tronar a la izquierda. See if I got that on there. Vas a estar aquí. You're going to be right here. Y mirar enfrente. You'll see that one. So it starts out, ok, vamos a tomar radiografías. Ven para acá, vas a estar aquí y mirar enfrente, which means you will be here and look in front, because I usually do all my A to P films first. And then after that, I'll do my laterals. I'll ask, hey, are you pregnant? ¿Estás embarazada ahorita? Right? I don't care. I'll just go straight into it as a direct. ¿Estás embarazada? Are you pregnant? My dad would always laugh about this one because he knew he speaks Spanish, and he knew that when learning the two languages, embaracho means drunk and embarazada means pregnant. So they're kind of the same, but make sure you don't mess that up. So you got to say it very specifically. ¿Estás embarazada? Are you pregnant? Right? Only for the women, obviously. And they'll say yes or no. Sometimes if I'm feeling just really informal and I feel really comfortable, I'll just like, hey, tienes bebé ahorita? And then I'll rub my stomach, which basically means like, hey, do you have a baby right now? And that's I've used that so many times, and they're like, oh no, I'm good. You know, they don't think it's weird. So I kind of just feel like I get away with that every time. And then when they're standing and you want them to go either forward or backwards. Forwards means adelante, and then backwards means atrás. And typically I'll say un poquito afterwards because I don't want them moving like a step forward. A lot of times it's only a mini step. So if I want to say move forward a little bit, you just say más adelante, poquito, a little bit. If I want to be like, we're talking micro inches, if I want them to move like a micro inch, I'll say más adelante, poquitito or poquitito. Let's write that down. So poquito means little. This is slang next. Poquitito. Little bit. Right? Poquito means little. Poquitito. Poquitito means little bit. I'll use that, and I'll kind of like use my voice too. Like instead of saying un poquito, I'll say un poquitito, right? And then they'll understand like, oh, I need to move like a micro inch. Once I take the x-rays or I want to take them out, when they're in the right position, I'll say, no te muevas, right? There you see that te again. Do not move. No te muevas. You are not going to move you. That's essentially what it means, right? Normally we're not like redundant in our sentence construction, but that literally means you do not move you. And I use that every time. So, and then they stand still. I had a patient teach me that one day, actually. So that is why I say that. There's another way that you can tell people to move. Puedes mover así. You can move like this. That's another way of saying repite, por favor, but very formal. You can move like this. You know, puedes mover así. Así means like this. Another one for the hips, you can say voy a tocar aquí, especially when you're checking hips. And I'm not sure if you do breathe in or breathe out, but if you need them to, you can have them breathe in and then hold it. So you would say, if you want them to breathe in and then hold it and do nothing, respire y no te muevas. And if you want them to breathe out and not move, you'd say, suéltelo y no te muevas, which means do not move. Let's say you've done all the x-rays. You can say, voy a evaluar las radiografías para encontrar la causa del problema. I will evaluate the x-rays to find the cause of the problem. Next, we'll say, vamos a hacer la próxima cita enfrente. La meta de la próxima cita es para repasar las radiografías y recomendaciones profesionales. Say it kind of like that, guys. I mean, you don't want to just sound like a robot, like, vamos a hacer la próxima cita enfrente. La meta de la próxima cita es para repasar. I mean, you don't want to sound like a robot like that. I mean, really use inflections, use your personality, use different speeds and whatnot in your sentence construction here. I'll give it to you like I would do it. So, vamos a hacer la próxima cita enfrente, ¿ok? La meta de la próxima cita es para repasar las radiografías y recomendaciones profesionales. ¿Hay preguntas para mí? And then they'll probably say no, which means, hey, are there any questions for me? And the whole phrase means, hey, we're going to basically make the next appointment in front. We're going to review the x-rays. The reason that we have the next appointment is to review the x-rays and the professional recommendations. Pretty straightforward. And then I'll actually say up in front, I don't have this written down. Let's say the person's name is Juan. I'm up in front. Juan necesita una cita lo más pronto posible, as soon as humanly possible. We know in statistics, or statistically, when we have a reschedule and they schedule 1 day out, high percentage. 2 days out, the percentage goes down. 3 days, 4 days, 5 days out, it gets even worse in terms of a return rate. So that's why I say lo más pronto posible, or lo más pronto posible, which means as soon as humanly possible. Sometimes I'll say para repasar. I'm not speaking real fast, guys. These are harder words to say, even for me. So I will speak slower. Juan necesita una cita lo más pronto posible para repasar las radiografías y recomendaciones profesionales. There we go. And then I will switch to the patient. I'll say, hey, mucho gusto, Juan. Entonces, hasta la próxima cita. Which means, hey, great to meet you, Juan, until our next appointment. And let's say it's a family. I write that down. Mucho gusto, familia. Hasta la próxima cita. Right? And then I just leave. And that's it. I don't say it there to chit chat. That's what I use the front desk for. And I mean, if you got a family, that's great. I mean, your front desk is going to be loving that because they'll have somebody to translate, but your front desk should be able to schedule somebody. So make sure that they know the days of the week, make sure that they can answer any basic questions like, hey, is there going to be a cost to it? Which would be no, hopefully the second appointment is included with the first one. If it is, you're going to need to let them know ahead of time. So, and then as a fallback too, as well, you can always use automatic texting system to ask them questions, which gives you the ability to copy and paste what they text you to then understand what they're saying. And that's how you can learn Spanish as well. It is difficult at times. Sometimes they don't actually speak in like great Spanish. It's like really, really slang. But most people I feel are okay with texting, and they'll actually text you something that's legible and you can put in a copy translator thing too. So that concludes the day one. I know it's like a long boot camp that we did today, but I mean, like I said, like once you get past day one, day two, I mean, the next modules are the modules after that are way easier, way more straightforward, and a lot more fun, quite frankly. So that is day one. All speaking. Consider yourselves educated.